Hello and welcome to Making Bridges, Community Reflections on Golden Hour, an exhibition of California photography from Los Angeles County Museum of Art. My name is Joseph Valencia. I work with VPAM, and it's a pleasure to introduce and moderate our program today. For those of you who don't know, Golden Hour features photographs from the early 1900s to the present day, and is presented as part of Local Access, which is a regional art partnership with LACMA, made possible by a generous grant from Art Bridges. So the goal of the initiative is to expand access to American art utilizing LACMA's collection and special exhibitions. VPAM is actually the third venue who's hosted this exhibition, and so it's been exciting to see it travel across Southern California. And after this weekend, the show will close and open at Cal State Northridge, the University Art Gallery there, and will run through the end of May of this year. So today we'll hear from the exhibition's curator, Eve Shilo, Associate Curator of the Wallace Annenberg Photography Department at LACMA, who will provide an overview and context for the exhibition and this initiative. And later we'll hear from three members from our museum community who have served as Art Bridges programming fellows this past year. They are Jill Olguin Smith, photography instructor at East LA College, Star Montana, an artist and alumni of East LA College, and Florante Ibañez, Asian American scholar, activist, and local documentation. This winter, each of the fellows spent time in the exhibition and designed and produced various events and initiatives related to the show. So we look forward to hearing about that and having an open conversation, especially thinking about how we can establish new bridges to art and culture with local communities in mind. So I'll pass it off to Eve. I was just checking with time. I'll pass it off to Eve to do an overview of our exhibition, and we'll get the show on the road. So Eve, you have the floor.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Joseph. Thanks to everyone at VPAM. It's been a really wonderful sharing experience to bring the collection to my favorite part of LA, East LA. I'm gonna jump right into it. Not assuming that, not assuming that everyone's seen the show. Can everyone see my screen? Yeah. This is a wonderful installation shot of Golden Hour, just to give you a sense of the range of photography in a glance and the scale. As Joseph mentioned, there's works from 1900 to present day, with admittedly a little more emphasis on contemporary. And my big challenge in organizing this exhibition was trying to create a California photography show that wasn't exactly the same as every other show you've seen. There have been many. It's an obvious choice for California institutions, but I really felt like I wanted to not create such a siloed and didactic exhibition, to really honor the artists who have multiple intents in their work and often find themselves parked over here by curators. So it's pretty open-ended curatorially. That said, I did have to give the show some structure. So these chapters, if you will, are solid in the catalog, the bilingual catalog, but become much more porous in the exhibition space. And in fact, you can start at any one of these points. There's no sort of linear narrative. And again, that was the goal for me, was to sort of have the artists sort of live free of any sort of superstructures. This is a wonderful entry point for the installation at VPAM. This is a large-scale projection of a video piece by Rodrigo Garcia, 7th and Alvarado, which is literally 7th and Alvarado. But as you can see in this image, a bit of history comes trotting through the intersection. I especially wanted to include video work in the exhibition. Many photographers work even-handedly in both still and moving imagery. And we tend to, when we do exhibitions, sort of, again, silo them, separate them. And in this exhibition, they freely share the wall with still imagery. So that was a big goal for me. The other goal was perhaps obvious, but to have historical work truly on a level playing field with contemporary. Often, curatorially, we create sort of what we call in context sections. So all this small, quiet historical work is clustered together and truly not on an even playing field with contemporary work. And I do believe that contemporary artists have sort of a visual history book in their mind, artists that have influenced them. I'm not saying that Rick Bolton here was directly influenced by William Henry Jackson, but when I brought his work into the collection, I was thinking about as far back as 1900 to the changing landscape that is Los Angeles, in this case Pasadena, but Southern California in general. We're always acquiring work that will play well with others, if you will. I'm not acquiring work just to check something off a list. It's always going to be subjective to our collection, which is to say that our collection is subjective. And so this show doesn't carry forward every aspect of California history, doesn't carry forward every aspect of photo history. And that's something you have to embrace. I didn't try to fill in every gap in order to create this exhibition. Here's another example of old and new. These two artists are sort of nominally in a section where I talk about California light. Neither one was totally creating this work for that reason, but it's a chance for me to highlight one aspect of their work. We have some wonderful diversity in the collection with Izumi's work, which I'm proud to say was created in, was it 31? And we acquired it that very year. And this is before we even had a photography department officially. So there's some wonderful history about the department also embedded in this exhibition, which I was really happy to draw out. So now I'll just go quickly through a little sampler of each of these chapters. It's a wonderful thing about Zoom and PowerPoint. You can, these images get equal billing on this particular stage. They're not all exactly the same size. So for those of you who don't have a chance to head over to VPAM directly after this, you'll get a chance to see their size in the next iteration. Rafael Cardenas, who's an alum of an exhibition at VPAM. We acquired a suite of sort of LA noir, all nighttime imagery. This is a great one that's included. And here I've paired it, which is not how it is in the show, but it's another iteration, with a really wonderful meditative piece by Tony Friedkin, who has been working his entire life as a surfer and a photographer, and has an ongoing surf essay that spans about 30 years. I liked having an imagery that was of the coast, but not just documentary. This is more of like a meditative zone that could be either Northern or Southern California, just on the edge. Just grabbed one supersized image to represent losing California, which in and of itself is an open-ended term. There's a certain amount of the coast that we will be literally losing, but there's also winners and losers in California. This image to me represents not just an amazing image that's about 90 inches wide, it's larger than human scale, represents in many ways those who get to embrace the coast, get to live on the coast. the duel of protecting the coast. How do we fight erosion? How do we fight climate change? I mean, there's a lot in here that's loosely under this losing rubric. Reimagining California is a little bit more obscure. I have paired these two images in the exhibition proper. I love having this sort of behind the scenes image by Robert Cumming on the left. That's Hollywood presenting California, sort of spitting out the perfect life in such movies as It's a Wonderful Life. And then that is paired with this image by Thomas McGovern of the San Bernardino flea market, and that same sort of behind the curtain feeling. And you have a little hopeful basket of oranges that you're seeing, but otherwise a different life. Representing California, maybe not obviously, is primarily figurative. And we do have a lot to share in this area, but I tend towards more abstract photography. So I've sort of clustered this work. If you've seen the exhibition, there's a reason for that. I left more room for large abstract imagery about California. This is another piece, major piece that is in the Representing California, Willie Middlebrook. Again, a moment that I'm proud of, that we acquired directly after he produced this, which was made in response to the 1992 Watts uprising. And then lastly, there's a section that is a little bit more about the social political landscape, if you will, of California, and remembering the histories that are either visible or not. On the left is a work by Clea Mckenna. It's a rather large scale. I think you can discern that there's 4 parts. So those are 4 photograms. It's made by taking a rubbing of a redwood that was felled up in Northern California. Because it's so large and so old, it took 4 sheets of paper to sort of create that portrait of a now missing link. The show also has quite a range, as I've mentioned with the time-based media, a range of what is photographic. So Clea would fall into that category. It's work that is made without a camera. So just photosensitive paper that is then exposed after the rubbing is made. And the Cristina Fernandez image, that is an image of a window looking out a window, which is a kind of a wonderful trope that is used in photography quite a lot. And I love how her work, which is the same date as Clea, tackles the landscape in a very different way. She started a series called View from Here. We had some of her work up recently at LACMA as well, and did research finding locations that are not so well known in our history, but are sort of totems. This is an image that's taken in Leadfield, California, which is in the Mojave Desert. It was a town that was established, just created out of a whim back in the 1800s by C.C. Julian. And it was just a lure. It was a falsehood. He tried to get people to move there and invest as if there was lead in Leadfield, and there was none. So she has, in this series, returned to specific locations that still have structures, and imagining the view that this person was trying to create out in that site. She also, Christina, I want to give a plug for, is going to be having a wonderful retrospective that's being organized by the California Museum of Photography, and coming, is it this fall? Coming soon. So you'll get to hear more about her work. I'm really a big fan. So I wanted to end with hers, and I guess I will stop sharing and pass it back to Joseph. I hope that was a broad enough, albeit very quick walkthrough of Golden Hour.
Yeah, thank you, Eve. And, I think one of the reasons, or something that's been really special, I guess, is your approach to, keeping things open and having that space to make different connections in the gallery, especially VPAM being at East LA College, and different types of students, different types of visitors that we have. Your show has facilitated a lot of these different types of connections, not a singular kind of experience in the show, and that's been really, I think, really exciting and interesting for us to witness.
Yeah.
So thank you for your partnership and for organizing the show.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, and if it's doing that, it's doing what it should.
Yeah, and I think that's a natural transition as well, because thinking about our 3 fellows that we worked with this past year, and the different approaches that each of them took with regards to seeing the show and creating either an event or an initiative. So I think with that we can transition, and Jill, we can connect with you. Jill Smith, who integrated Golden Hour, and I'm looking at my notes to make sure the class is right, but integrated the exhibition into one of her classes at ELAC Photo 121, which is the history and appreciation of photography.
Yes.
And working with writing and criticism. So I would love for you to talk more about your connection to the campus and how you integrated the show into your class.
Sure. I'll be brief. Hi, everybody. Yeah, thank you so much, Eve. That was really special to hear your perspective firsthand and kind of walk through the show. That was great. Yeah, I was super happy to connect with Joseph and be a part of this. I've been wanting to connect my students with VPAM for a very long time. So this was a great opportunity. And what I did is I have 2 classes right now. First, I should say I've been at ELAC since 2012. I was brought into the photography department, which is now media arts, because I come from a fine art background. I was sort of the missing link to that perspective of self-expression and looking at photography just beyond sort of straightforward classical prints. So I really encourage students to use this language. I think of this as sort of the common language of our time, this visual language that they're going to use no matter what they do. But I do get them to shoot. That's really my goal. I think it's important to hear everyone's voice through photography. That's just what I'm really passionate about. So I've been an adjunct. I started at the black and white darkroom. I was teaching black and white darkroom practices, which I love. I was moved over to digital photography, and now I'm teaching history photography, and they all work together. And I love the students at ELAC. I think we have such a great student body and really interesting work coming out of our students. So having said that, yeah, I spoke with Joseph and I thought, well, I can create an assignment for my Photo 121 class. So this class is from the discovery or the invention, however you look at it, of photography to present day contemporary photography. So, but at that time, it was about 3 weeks into the winter semester, and we had just come up to pictorialism, introducing straight photography. So it was really interesting to create this assignment where the students would go to VPAM, see the show based on what they know about photography at that point in my class, and write a paragraph about one piece of work that struck them, and they could choose what they saw, what they wanted to write about. For example, how is a piece connected to a style or a movement like pictorialism? Or how is it not connected to pictorialism? Or how is an image considered a straight photograph? So they would talk about the piece that they saw, and they would talk a little bit about what they've learned, because I want to make sure that we're integrating what they've learned with what they're seeing. So what I really, really loved about this is, I got my students to be engaged with VPAM. I'd like to keep that going. I think it's really important. I think it's a wonderful museum. It's a great opportunity, and our students need to be sort of connected. B, they got to see work that is not projected on a screen, that is not in a book. It's so much different to experience art in person. And I keep preaching that, and they got the chance to do that, which is really, really cool. And then to have this connection to, well, I love photography because it's a democratic medium, right? We can all do this, we're all doing it. But they got to see work that's in a museum that's created in their home state where they're living. And I think that that identification and connection is really important. And I think that it sort of gives you, it gives you this idea that you could do it too. That's just my thought. And I think that that's important. I think that that opens up doorways for students. So am I babbling on too long? I hope I'm not. This is my viewpoint. So the students came back and they were so excited. Like, that was so great. We loved it so much. They loved it, you know, to see like Dorothea Lange. They were looking at Dorothea Lange because this is my kind of classic history of photography class. But then to see other works of art from other photographers that they had never seen before. And frankly, new photographers for me, there's just a vast world of photographers working out there. So it's really fun for me to discover new work. They were invigorated by it. And they brought their mom, they brought their sisters. And it was just really, really nice to get the community to come to VPAM and to have them kind of have this experience. So that was what I did with my class with this show. And then I continued it, actually, my next writing assignment, because this is an accelerated semester in winter. I had the class jump over to LACMA's website for the show. And there's 4 videos there by Cristina Fernandez, Rafael Cardenas, Ed Drew, and Hong Lu. And I asked them to please watch all 4 videos and to write about one of the artists that affected them emotionally. Because I believe that art and photography, it should do something to you in your heart. It should do something here, as opposed to like, I'm going to analyze this from, you know, I don't know, compositionally. I mean, I think that's important to know, but it should do something to you. It should affect you. And so that was my second assignment in conjunction with the show. So as we are all talking, as I heard Eve talking, I thought for my other class, I may actually just continue this when it goes to Northridge, but I would probably work with my Photo 123 class, which is more about aesthetics and inspiration and where our ideas come from, and it's more contemporary. And so I have that class write, but I also have them shoot, because my goal is to kind of get them behind the lens if they're going to learn about the history of photography and they've never really done anything other than maybe social media or just snapshots, to kind of put themselves behind the lens and to see, well, what makes a successful composition just with whatever they have. And so anyway, that's my thought moving forward. But it was really wonderful. It was a great show. Thank you so much. It was wonderful. I hope that's not too much to say.
No, that was perfect, Jill. And we'll have an opportunity to talk everyone together after we go through 2 more of our projects. But thank you for partnering with us and establishing that bridge with us too. The next speaker is Star Montana, who is a photo-based artist and educator, and one of our proud alumna. And Star produced an online community critique program called Reimagining Group Crit. And it was a really beautiful program, and I'll pass it off to Star to talk about the thinking behind it and how it went.
Hi everyone. So me and Joseph, that will be the we. Me and Joseph had been thinking what we can do. We had a few weeks since the opening of the show of what we would kind of do in terms of my project. we had established that we would want some type of community engagement in terms of a conversation. Oh, thank you, Felix. In terms of a conversation. And, when we had started to have the conversation, it was the numbers were low and people were doing um, in-person conversations, and we knew we would probably keep it low. But VPAM had went kind of everybody went on winter break, and we didn't want to do something when the students weren't around, because that, I had been a student at ELAC, East Los Angeles College, and I had worked at VPAM. So I also recognized that, I didn't want to do something when the students weren't around, or, when student workers around. So we decided to wait till winter, semester, even though if it's short. But then once, the surge happened, like last year, we kind of switched it. We switched it to online. And so we switched it to online, and we promoted the first one, which would be just for ELAC students and community members. And there wasn't that much engagement, because I feel like right now with the pandemic, it's just kind of I've been at ELAC, and I know, like, especially in winter break, everybody just wants a break. So we kind of switched it either from just ELAC to open community. Like, we were encouraging people from East Los Angeles College and the community of like East LA and everybody, but we just opened it to open community critique and kind of reimagining it. Even though it could kind of seem like a traditional critique, which would be like art school or like even technical school. So when I call it technical school, it, like at ELAC, when I was going there, it would be encouraged that this was technical training, that when it was imagined in the 40s, that you were supposed to then go out and produce, like you would get a commercial, you would open your commercial school or your commercial job. But now it's different. We have like people who are now getting hired through Instagram, or you go to like me, I went to fine art, and people just they want to sometimes just do it for the love of it. So with those parameters, we had encouraged it that, like, hey, if you have a photograph, if you have a small body of work, like, let's just all meet up and have a conversation about like imagery in the just like within a safe space of community. And I think a lot of the times, like, I see advertisements of like paid, like you can come and talk to professionals, and I wouldn't necessarily still call myself a professional, even though some people would. Like, I always say, like, I'm still learning all the time. But like you have to like pay somebody to do it. So like this was just free, and I wouldn't be the primary like all-knowing knowledge. It would be collective, where everybody was invited to share information. And Rafa, who Eve just had showed up. I think there's another person, Nubia, not to put them like in the spotlight, who's here, was a part of it, who's a really great photographer. And a lot of people who there was mixed, who had never took photo classes, but were emerging or aspiring photographers, and other people who went to art school but maybe hadn't had a critique in a while. Just we all wanted to talk about imagery, and it was really good, because a lot of times in art school, or like more technical art schools or whatever, there's an objective where there has to be a mastery or something, or you have to accomplish something. And sometimes we just want to show images, and we kind of want to say, I'm working on something, I'm not sure, and I want to feel safe, and I want to understand it, and I don't want to be destroyed. And that was a lot of my experience when I was making my bodies of work, is I didn't want to be destroyed. I just wanted to figure something out. And I felt like we felt safe with each other to say like we're experimenting. So, I'll show two people's works that said it was okay. And just, that we were just, figuring things out, or kind of like, getting a little Freudian, like, maybe this is the undercurrent of this. So let me just show this. So this was, damn, I don't want it to go onto, okay, sorry if it's small. Oh, wait, let me resume. Okay. I hate that it does that, sorry. Let me share my full screen. I'm just gonna share my desktop, okay. Okay, yeah. Okay, so this was one artist's work. This was Elizabeth Prager. And sorry if it's small, but I got it from their website. And this is, so you could go to their website, Elizabeth Prager. So they had showed a long series of like, this is work where they continue showing the same person and family. And it was really beautiful because they're in a lot of times with bodies of work, it's just you show one person in the series and you don't go back to it. And with this body of work, they continue having this relationship with a close friend of theirs. And so I really appreciated that because that was a very decolonial thing where it's like it's just kind of a quick exchange, but there was multiple in the work that they showed, there was multiple images of that, and that's not really seen in bodies of work, where it's usually if it's just that person, then you see them over time. But then with different people, I saw the same person reoccurring, and I thought that was very interesting. And then, so this person and this person were in the same body of work, along with like this person reappearing in like throughout different years. And then this was another person, Ian, and I really appreciated their work because it was this, and I'm just going to show two images of both. It was this, and then this is LACMA, and it was very interesting because with their work, it was very archival, but then we were talking about how it's preservation, but then there's also a little bit of chaos in it. And so when we were talking about the archival part of it, there was a lot of help, and there's form, there's preservation, but then there's also chaos. And so I appreciated that. I appreciated having the conversation with each one. And a lot of the time in traditional critique, when I was part of it, it was, people would leave after theirs or they would get bored. We were only supposed to stay an hour and a half. We ended up staying, I don't know, Joseph, like how long, like about like 3.5 hours.
Yeah, just over 3 hours.
Yeah. And so it was very beautiful and everybody gave, and I really appreciated that, everybody gave to each other, and, it was very magical in that way, and everybody tried to help and they wanted to continue to connect with each other. And so I felt like it was very successful in the way that there was care and openness, and that it just their photo projects, at the end, it's not about being like not an end game, but just a continue for exploration and a curiosity to it. So I was very grateful that I was able to help facilitate it, but I did not feel like I was the hierarchy in it. So that was my project.
Thank you, Star, so much for sharing that. And I think, like you said, it really was a special event that I hope we could talk a little more towards the end of the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Our next fellow, Florante Ibañez, is a scholar, activist, and local documentarian. And actually, we also had the issue of pivoting because of the spike during the pandemic, and originally wanting to do a community archiving project, scanning photo archives, and not wanting to risk and bring create a precarious environment. And so we transitioned it online. And so we still had about, I believe, 20 different individuals share from their personal collections. And I believe Florante created a presentation that he'd like to share with us based off of these images. So Florante, you have the floor.
Thank you. Let me go ahead and share screen.
Mhm.
Okay, so a little bit of background on me. I'm retired finally. I was a librarian for 20 some odd years and worked at Loyola Law School. I also did my grad work at UCLA for Asian American Studies and also my library degree. And so now I have one job. I'm here at the house, but I have one class that I teach part-time over at Pasadena City College, History of Asian Pacific Americans, which I'm very happy to do. And transitioning from online to back in face and not knowing what's going to happen next is kind of crazy, but you got to do what you got to do. So anyway, as Joseph said, we went back and forth on how to do this in a safe way and also try and make it interesting and relate to the exhibit, which is just fantastic over at the museum. So what we chose to do was actually to try and take an aspect of our perspective on the Filipino American and try to bring that perspective to also how do we view California and what are some of the stories behind some of the pictures that we have. So I did a similar project for a book that my wife and I did called Filipinos in Carson by Arcadia Press, and it's out there along with all the other Arcadia books that all look the same on the covers because they're all sepia covers. But ours is the one that says Carson on it. So anyway, I'll go ahead and start. So to understand Filipino American immigration, you have to understand the unique and close relationship that the Philippines and US have following the Spanish-American War and the subsequent Philippine-American War and US colonization of the Philippines for 50 years. This cover of our book was taken during the first 4th of July Philippine Independence Day celebration in 1946 at the Long Beach Hilton. It marked the formation of the Filipino community of Los Angeles Harbor Area Incorporated. It was a donation that was actually handed to me from a secondhand contact of another art author, Karina Forsyth Montoya, who produced also her own books of Filipinos in Hollywood and Los Angeles Historic Filipino Town. The image on the right, the Rizal Day program, also came from Karina, who commented, "Despite discrimination against Filipinos, the Philippine flag was displayed for the Rizal Day celebration in 1926, downtown Los Angeles." The early Filipino pioneers came into Los Angeles as early as the 1910s, lured by the promise of education, making it rich, and intentions of sending money back to their families in the Philippines. This photograph is Unidad Park in historic Filipino town, also known as High Five. It was taken on October 8th, 2020, during the taping of a segment for the Festival of Philippine Arts and Culture, with dancers from Kayamanang ng Lahi, who were lined up to applaud the work of muralist Eliseo Art Silva, whose important mural of Filipino and Filipino-American history is the background. And the photo was done by Tina Apolis. They came as students and to work in the agricultural fields. Of the many provinces providing their young men to work in America, a large portion came from the Ilocos region in northern Luzon. Later, this entire generation of vibrant, eager, and hardworking young men would collectively be called Manongs, a title of respect for an Ilocano elder. The Filipino Student Club from Pasadena Junior College's 1935 yearbook is shown here. Under American occupancy, Filipinos sought education and opportunity in California, donated by Professor Susie Ling from PCC. The few Filipino women who came in this period as wives and their daughters were considered the orchids of the largely bachelor society. Single Filipinos were constantly being courted by multiple suitors. My grandmother on the far left, Amalia Ibañez Imperio, and my aunt Ling on the photo on the right is seen here, home farming in Gardena in the 1960s. While Filipinos still worked in the fields in Torrance and Alameda, with World War II, the Long Beach Naval Operating Base, Naval Air Station, and Naval Shipyard, all on Terminal Island became the home port for many Filipino-American sailors, and Fort MacArthur in San Pedro had facilities for use by military families as well. So that flyer, Meet Me at Rainey's, is also from Karina. Bobby Balsena was the first Filipino-American Major League ball player from San Pedro. And this photograph is the courtesy of the Filipino-American National Historical Society. On the upper photograph, Filipino servicemen and friends gathered in downtown Los Angeles to celebrate the end of World War II in 1945. American granted citizenship to some Filipinos who fought with American soldiers during the war, but rescinded its promise to these veterans to receive benefits, courtesy of Karina Montoya. Below, the federal building in downtown Los Angeles, dated February 19th, 2008. Filipino veterans of World War II protesting in front of the federal building in downtown Los Angeles, courtesy Michael Nylet. And this is having to do with the fact that Filipino veterans in World War II were not getting the same benefits as other veterans. And finally, an equity bill was signed into law, and now they're, well, a lot of them had already passed, but at least the surviving ones and their families were able to collect some of that benefits. Filipino youth, the children of Manongs, also known as the Bridge Generation, and the children of second wave military families, grew up to the sounds of Lawrence Welk, the Beatles, Motown, rock and roll, and later disco. At the same time, they became caught up in the social movements of the 1960s and 70s. Left, here's a view of the Palikte wedding bridal party from July 3rd, 1954. And then I have a bunch of names here, so I'm not going to read them all, of all the folks in the wedding entourage. I thought interesting, one of the women was called Pickles, but anyway, that's another thing. The bottom photograph is actually them having the reception at the Filipino Community Center from that first photograph that I showed you in Wilmington. But the ceremony itself, it was held at St. Columban's Filipino Church in Hi-Fi, which was the first Filipino Catholic church in Los Angeles due to the discrimination of, I guess, Filipinos not being able to host their own church. And that is courtesy of Denise Palikte and her family. On the right are some photographs done also during that period by other members who submitted photographs. I didn't have time to get all the captions in. In most cases, Filipino dialects were not passed on to their children, believing that assimilation to American mainstream was more important. Parents only wanted the best for their children, and the passing of culture and history became effectively limited to Filipino food and replaced with family pressure towards higher education and careers. These young ladies on the left are still my friends. And we're all graying in the hair now these days, except for them. They've all dyed their hair black or brown or whatever color they wanted to. This is an image of a production still from 8mm memories, The Conversation by Joe Verrata, my digital histories project with visual communications. They are still images from 8mm footage shot by his father in the 60s and 70s, depicting the experiences of a Filipino Navy family in San Diego. Reverend Jesse Jackson makes the first of several visits to a politically fractured Filipino-American community to support for free and fair elections after a snap election was called by then Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos. And this was donated by, or it belongs to Visual Communications, which is located in historic Little Tokyo, as probably the premier document storage house of Asian American photographs and films. The bottom photograph shows Miss Philippines Celebration Parade, sponsored by the Filipino community of Los Angeles as seen in 1965. The parade was part of 4th of July celebrations held at LA City Hall in downtown Los Angeles. Another photograph from Karina Montoya. Filipino American youth, the children of Manongs, also known as the Bridge Generation, and children of second wave military families grew up to the sounds of Lawrence Welk, the Beatles, Motown rock, and roll, and later disco. At the same time, they became caught up in the social movements of the 70s and 80s, or 60s, 70s, and 80s. During the Filipino American community hot lunch program in Los Angeles for seniors, a young volunteer from Search to Involve Filipino Americans, SIPA, prepares for a group performance. Later, with the 1972 Declaration of Martial Law in the Philippines, American-born Filipinos called for an end to U.S. military aid to the Marcos dictatorship and were joined by recent immigrants, some having left the Philippines for political freedom. A photo by Uncle Roy Morales. With the majority who had come taking advantage of the 1965 change in immigration law, allowing thousands of professionals and skilled technicians to come and bring families to America. This third wave of immigration is often cited as the brain drain of the Philippines. Left and below, in Rosemead, family members visiting their first home in Rosemead, California photographer Vic Corborales in Rosemead, and photograph was donated by Mary Rose Mendoza. June 1970, LAX is the photograph on the bottom right. My parents leaving Manila, Philippines for the United States after the 1965 Immigration Act was passed. Same photographer, donated by Mary Rose Mendoza again. Manila Airport, Philippines. From 1971 to 1985, the community came together at annual Filipino People's Far West conventions to discuss and strategize against racial and national discrimination, and also to have fun and socialize. Upper right, Banning High School cheerleader Sally Monteclaro Hadley donated this photo with her and former Rams quarterback, who is also Filipino American, Roman Gabriel. Lower left, early Philam community activists, left to right, Candy and Uncle Al Mendoza, Uncle Roy Morales, and Esther Soriano. The three on the right have passed away since this was taken. That's my photograph of those guys. Lower right, Haiti Vilcido selling Pinay clothing merchandise at FPAC, Festival of Philippine Arts and Culture, in the late 1990s in San Pedro, California. She started the company to show pride in her culture. Clockwise, the Iñez family cousins taken in 1960, courtesy of my uncle Marcelino Iñez Jr. To the right, January 1972 at St. Basil's Church on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles, waiting for the bride as she arrives to get married, from Mary Rose Mendoza. And bottom right, Sing to the Stars is the title, backed by veteran pop combo Jack Buscone and the Serenaders. A woman belts out a soulful ballad for attendees during a Filipino-American hot lunch program for seniors, from Visual Communications. Upper left, Marina Beach, Marina del Rey, May 18th, 2019. Kayamanan ng Lahi performs folk dance Passing on the Sand. The daughter of Tina Apolis plays the fish trying to escape the net of the fisherman. And below them, A Life in Rondalia, Tagumpay de Leon, NEA National Heritage Fellow, Historic Filipino Town, January 2022, last month, celebrating the achievement of the second Filipino American to win this award. And the black and white photos on the right. Center of attention during a hot lunch program for Filipino American seniors, and attendee revels in the stylings of a youth accordion band. And also from Visual Communications, smoking a cigar at the Filipino American Community Los Angeles FACLA hot lunch program for seniors. The patron lights up a cigar. Charmaine Colomor and Jazzville USA Filipino American Jazz Festival, January 2nd, 2022 is the upper right. This is her words. I am known as the Filipino American community as the Queen of Jazz Pino. Jazz Pino is a musical genre I created which combines Filipino melodies, languages, and instruments with jazz. Aside from being a performing artist, I co-founded a nonprofit organization called Jazzville USA. And the photograph was taken January 1st, last month, 2022, after being on hiatus for 7 years. It was a way to greet 2022 with love, joy, music, and positivity. It was a sold out performance. And to the left of that is also from Charmaine. This is a photo of my late father, Baltimore Clamore Jr., and my mother, Eve Clamore. My father passed away May 2021. This photo was taken 1 month before he had a stroke in their home in Northridge, California. There is so much unspoken tenderness, familiarity in this photo, and most of all, love between a husband and wife of 55 years. And on the bottom right, a photo of downtown LA with City Hall on the far right, LAPD headquarters on the left, and the Caltrans 7 headquarters building on the right, taken about a year ago. The Carson blimp ride on the left was a prize for essay contest winners of Why I Like Carson theme. And the donor was the former Carson mayor, Jim Deere. Above, photographer Michael Nylad, location Lake Street Park, Historic Filipino Town, October 27, 2007. Veterans staying cool in the shade at Lake Street Park, site of the Filipino Veterans Memorial, while waiting for the American Coalition of Filipino Veterans press conference to begin. This is during the equity demonstrations for equity. And to the bottom right, to the right, Mary Toulousan donated this. It's entitled Don Mabalan. It's a memorial event held at UCLA of January 2019, celebrating the life and work of Don Mabalan, who was a scholar who passed away, dear friend. And clockwise, benches were incorporated at the Filipino Veterans Memorial to provide elderly veterans a place to sit, reflect, and tell their stories to visitors. This is at Lake Park in Hi-Fi also. On the right is paroles on display. I believe I'm sorry, I got mixed up there. The photograph on the bottom left is taken by a wedding photographer, Melanie, don't know the last name, taken in 1999 at the Radisson Hotel, Culver City. Sam and Rowena Ju wedding, first Korean-Filipino wedding on both sides of their families. They tried to meld both cultures in different aspects of the day. Courtesy Rowena Dakayun Ju. And the last picture on the bottom right, we know what's coming up. So whose house is it? Ram's house. And this was sent from Neil Estrada. And with that, I'll just close it up. Thank you so much. Screen.
I think you're still sharing the
I know I'm trying to
oh, okay.
get to the thing because it's actually down in the. I got your face is all covering up the clicker. Oh, there it is.
There you go.
Thank you.
Mhm. Well, thank you, Florante, for showing all these images that were submitted and weaving a really beautiful narrative, both historical and kind of and community driven, right? And I should say that we're working with Florante to create an online gallery of these images and translating the presentation to a blog post so we can continue to have it available online. And so I do want to note that we are, pretty much at time, but I do want to open it up still and talk about how these, reflections on these different programs and what are some connections here? And actually, I'm curious, if I may, not to put you on the spot, I'm wondering, Eve, if you have kind of any reflections or, insight or, responses, just to hearing these three very different initiatives.
Yeah. I mean, I only had the sort of the broad strokes, the ideas that you had in mind. I certainly knew about what you were going to do should this pandemic have calmed down. So I knew that version. And I just love all the layers that you've got. Jill, just the idea that you were able to sort of cement this idea that having an experience with art is, something that everybody should have the opportunity to have. And if you're getting it while you're in that learning cycle, it just becomes something that's part of you. Also, I loved hearing that when they're in the space, and specifically a show about California, suddenly seeing an image of a back alleyway. I'm thinking of Madoka Takagi's beautiful platinum palladium print that's of a sort of an alleyway with the morning glory overgrown. Just starting to see imagery like that with fresh eyes and what you could capture around you. That's warmed my heart, because that's something that I really wanted to be able to share, that sort of broader idea of being able to trust your own eye and trust your gut. As a patron who's coming in, or as an artist yourself, that's really something I feel is a big part of my role. It's not necessarily putting out scholarly publications. It's really just making art accessible to everyone, whether you're a maker or not. So I loved hearing all about that. And STARS program is sort of in that same vein, just keeping it open and allowing everyone to contribute to the dialogue, whatever stage you're at. That's sort of in lockstep with the sort of behind the scenes rules for me creating a show like this. And then Florante, I love the idea that something that's being embraced fully by photography departments is the concept of what we call vernacular photography. And there are just moments of history and culture that are only encapsulated in family photographs. You just can't capture certain moments, and an artist might not be there at the scene of something or know about it in order to ruminate on it and create a work themselves. So it's a really integral part of visual culture that's I think in 2022 really being embraced across the board in academia, in the museum world. So those three programs are kind of, you're perfect. You're spot on, VPAM. They should probably be sort of continue in some way. Like Jill, you were mentioning that it's something that can sort of live on in a different format. So
definitely. I just want to say that, and I don't mean to jump in on what you're saying. I apologize, but it's exciting to me to hear that. And I wanted to thank Florante for your exhibition, because I feel like I learned a lot about, not only about the Filipino culture here in my neighborhood, but and immigration, but also it gave me permission. It kind of opened a door in my own work, being an artist, like, oh, wait, yes, these family photos, which I found your images really inspiring, is the bottom line. I wanted to thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So
Definitely,
I know
yeah.
that they came from, you know, when you do this stuff online, it's really hard to predict what's going to come because we were expecting originally to be able to do some scanning at like local libraries and on campus, but it was just very, you know, the pandemic, it just turns everything upside down. So we tried to work around it and figured out, well, you know, our time is very short. How many, how many images are we going to end up with? So, you know, it was, of course, at the last minute, a bunch of stuff comes in, and a lot of the stuff comes not the way you want it. Oh, can you go to the website and just pull this off? Can you go to my Flickr account and just take whatever you want?
Oh,
I said, no, that's not how it works. You have to submit, and you have to have what's the story behind the picture, because that's what it's all about. And I think you know, I was so happy to do this, and a lot of comments I had from some of the submitters is that they were very glad that something like this was provided for them. And as we've discussed with Joseph and Stephen, the plan is if you haven't submitted in time, because we got those two, are you going to extend the date? Are you and you know how that goes. And so we said we'll continue with the blog to accept more photographs and their stories and have them available. So that should be a living gallery that folks can refer to as well.
Thank you so much. And you know, I think, you know, we do want to keep it going. And I think going back to the mission, right, of this initiative, why this exhibition even came to the Vincent Price Art Museum is, and why this panel is called Making Bridges. It's like, how do we continue to make bridges and make connections and bring different communities into the museum? And so I'm really grateful to all three of our fellows here that partnered with us to do very different projects. And we still had to be creative on our toes, right? You know, like how do we pivot? How do we pivot? But thank you, each of you, and as well as Eve, for the exhibition. And I know we're running over on time. I just want to open it up if anyone has any comments or questions for any of our panelists. Give some space for that as well.
I would like to just thank all of you for great collaboration and expanding the idea of the exhibition and opening it up to community. But Star, thank you so much for that critique. That was really great. And yeah, I think it's also not only like challenging our exhibition spaces, but also like working backwards, like undoing some of the damage done in art school. And that felt really therapeutic for me to do that. And also, I also teach photography, and like rethinking how we do things. Like I've been, I don't know, like holding back in doing things the way I was taught to do them, and to allow like new language and new ways of approaching the work and like each other is really helpful. And to see that unfold on this platform and making it accessible the way you did it over Zoom was really helpful. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Yuvia. And no, I appreciate it. You and Rafa and like just everybody that came to the platform, because like I said, it's like community and reimagining it, and being able to be open with each other. And you know, like a lot of us went to school, and you know, we went to school with expectations of one thing, and then I think there's this colonial training that we continue to get pushed upon us, you know, that if we're not taught a certain way, that, you know, we're not good or we're not smart enough, you know. And in that way, I feel like you can be taught the techniques without being taught the colonial, you know, the colonial trauma. And so I feel like us just being within the space of each other and saying it's okay, or we, you know, let's take the time, or let's nourish each other, and you know, our work matters to each other. You know, if it doesn't matter to anybody else, it matters to ourselves and to each other, you know, that's important. So I appreciate it you and everybody. And, it's hard, because I feel like everybody always says it takes 10 years to get over grad school, but it's also just, technical school, art school, and it shouldn't take that long. It shouldn't take that long to get over trauma. Why is that like a joke? And I'm sure everybody's heard that from school, but that's not funny if you really think about it, so I just appreciated that, because being in these spaces, like I said, I need that too. It's like I've went through that too in all my schools, so I appreciated that space, and that we're all here for each other, because we're all going to continue. The fact that we get up and get our camera and have all the doubt, but we still keep doing it, it matters, and all our work, all our archival and research work. So yeah.
Thank you, Star. And I don't even think we could totally communicate like how it felt to be in that the 3-hour session, and how wonderful it was, and staying connected and with people from high school age to already, well on professional careers, and everything in the middle. Are there any other questions or comments from the group? Well, if not, I just want to thank you all for joining us, and also share that in some ways this is just the beginning. I think especially with programs, I think all of the programs, we could continue them in different ways, and sometimes tied to exhibitions, and others maybe they're just a standalone thing that we continue to do as a museum. And for those who haven't had the opportunity to see the exhibition, it does close this weekend at the museum. But like I said, we're thrilled to share that it will travel to Cal State Northridge's campus. It will be at the University Art Gallery from February 19th. I'm looking at my notes. February 19th to May 14th, 2022. So, definitely check out this exhibition and make your own connections to the works on view. Okay, well, thank you all again, and we'll close out the program. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, VPAM.
Bye, take care.
Bye.
Bye.